Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and I have a fun and pretty short video today because we're going to talk about the Wicked Cushion freeze pads for the Turtle Beach Stealth Pro. One of my favorite wireless gaming headsets I've ever used. I use it all the time, so I am very familiar with these pads. In fact, one of them actually got damaged from one of my old headphone stands that I wasn't crazy about. I nicked it, and this is a really thin leatherette, so it's not the most durable. So in this review, I will have links in the description below to help save you some money. It takes 15% off the pad if you decide you want to purchase it. It does support the channel now. I used to not accept any affiliate kickbacks on these pads for like a year and a half because I really don't want my channel to be about, you know, making as much money as I can. I just want to help people and be honest because I want you to see this channel as a trustworthy source. So now that I've accepted some affiliate revenue from links that you purchase in or click and purchase from, I wanted to share that to be fully honest and open. Now, these pads aren't perfect. There's going to be pros and cons, and I will say that in this video, so please don't see that as a way for me to, you know, try to sell this to you necessarily. It won't change how I review anything, but again, I just want to be very honest and open. So let's talk about pricing. So the all black version is $29.95, and then the print version, which is this Geo Gray, is $31.95. You have the 90s black, which is a really nice fun print, 90s literally, and that one's $31.95. They also have a black like camouflage print, which I like. I actually use that one a lot on some other models, but I think this one, the Geo Gray, works for me. So the discounts in the links below will take 15% off whichever one you purchase, but by all means purchase it wherever you want. So let's talk about the basics. I'm going to talk about why you would consider the pad, and then I'll show you how to take it apart and switch them out because it's pretty straightforward. So the stock pads I actually like. I haven't had an issue with the stock pad. They trap in all the sounds. I have really good noise isolation. They've been very comfortable for glasses. That's why I have them out here. I always use, I always test, but I occasionally use blue light reduction yellow glasses from Gunnar. So glasses important is still, or glasses comfort is still important for me. And the stock pads were good because Turtle Beach has always had this like pro spec advertising where they're very soft and supple. However, the one thing that you can't fix with this is because it's leatherette, they don't breathe as well, and after a while they get hot, and that's been the #1 cause of discomfort for people is the long-term gaming performance. It gets a little spicy, you have to kind of take them off, especially because this has a relatively strong clamp force. So when you factor that in too, it really becomes a breathability issue. So you would consider the freeze pad primarily for breathability and looks, just to be clear. If you want to just customize it, this is still a good option. The sound quality impact is minimal, and I will show you the difference measured in terms of how this impacts the sound. But as far as comfort goes, the most immediate things I notice when I put them on, these pads are slightly stiffer than the stock ones, only because the stock Turtle Beach pads are so squishy. You feel like this one's just a little bit more dense and a little bit more firm. Still very compliant. This is an upgrade for a lot of other gaming headsets out there, so it's nothing that these aren't good at necessarily. But the other thing you notice is obviously as soon as it touches the skin, it's a different material. And this sport fabric material is slightly more scratchy. It is a sport fabric. I haven't had any issues with it. It's just more breathable though. So the biggest takeaway from this, if you're considering a pad upgrade, it's for the long-term gaming, not the initial first 10-second feel, but if you're playing games for 2 hours at a time, the Wicked Cushions has been a good upgrade for me. I can wear the Stealth longer without feeling like I have to pop it off of my ear. And on the note of comfort, because they didn't go too much thicker, I'll show you the dimensions in a moment, the clamp force isn't drastically impacted as well. It is a little bit more firm feeling, but not in a sense that I feel like I'm just getting bear hugged. Like the Stealth 700 has an even stronger clamp force than this does with this pad. So let's talk about how easy it is to take it off. Now you can use a butter knife if you're careful. Frankly, if you have very strong fingernails or the edge of your finger, you can actually pop this off without using any tools. But I will tell you, the first time you remove the pads, the Stealth Pro pads are mounted very firmly. Once you get that initial break of the seal, it's pretty easy after that. So I'm using a plastic like little pry tool that comes in those electronics repair kits. Just because I like using plastic on plastic, I'm less likely to scratch something. And all I have to do is kind of wedge it in and work around. So the reason why I'm taking this off is because I want to show you a couple things. Relatively painless, right? You will notice that there's a foam underneath with the hole. That's for the active noise cancellation mic, which is this little bump. And if you look at the stock pad, let's get the ones that are an exact match. So they Wicked Cushions, have a very similar design approach to the stock pad. There's no issues as far as mounting it goes, and they even use the same foam inlay, which means you have less of an impact on sound quality as well. This is great to see, because if they could have just gone with a standard like acoustic fleece, if you will, or a sport fabric cover, just to make the baffle look clean, and it would have worked, but it would have been a much harsher treble response, which is like that sound. So this preserves the stock sound quite a bit, and it's labeled. You can see the little L here, and there's the L on this ear cup. So all I have to do is place it back on. You'll see tabs, but honestly, this little hole should tell you roughly where it goes. It's not too hard to line up, and then you just have to push it on, and that's it. I got a few pops in there, and now I'm good to go. It's nice and snug. Oh, I missed one. Let's get that last one in. There we go. Okay, had to make sure that was a good seal. You don't want it to be a loose seal because that can impact bass if it's kind of flapping around, but we're good to go now. So let's talk about dimensions now, because there is a slight change, and I think most people will like this. Usually if the pad gets a little bit bigger, it's typically just going to improve comfort. So when we look at the stock pad, let's go left and left again. The stock pad has a height of just over 60 millimeters. Let's say about 60 millimeters on the dot, if I go more straight. And then we look at the width here, we are at roughly 42, 44 millimeters. And you go to the new Wicked Cushion Freeze pad, we're pushing closer to 47 millimeters of width. And when we look at the height, we're about 61, 62 millimeters of height. So the pads are a little bit bigger. They also are a little bit deeper. Now I found out after opening this that my battery is getting low. So if this starts blinking, that's why, but it still works accurately. The stock pad depth. From the back edge to the front before I start compressing the pad a little bit is just about 26.5 millimeters. Let's compress it slightly. So we'll just say 26 millimeters. You can see there's just a little bit of give right there. And that's not bad. That's actually a good pad depth. The Wicked Cushion Freeze pad is giving us a little bit more. We're closer to 29 millimeters of pad depth. So the little extra depth, if you've ever felt like the stock pad isn't quite large enough for your ear, but it's not bad, the freeze pad being just slightly bigger, both in depth, width, and height, might be just enough to make you have the comfort you've been looking for. So let's talk about weight, because anytime you get into a freeze pad, because they have the gel, they are a little bit heavier. So the stock pads, if I put this on my little scale, is 42 grams. Now if I switch to the freeze pad, I'm at 86 grams. Oh, 88 grams, I just gained some weight. So you're doubling the weight essentially from your stock pad. That does feel a little heavier when you're just holding the headset, but when you're wearing it, because the weight gained is on the pad itself, it's not really too noticeable, but that's the way they weigh. Then we look at the pad compression. Now I talked about the pad stiffness being a thing earlier. The stock pads are very squishy, and you can see that as you put some pressure on them, they kind of shrink down a little bit. This is also why you can see a really nice seal right here, and that's what traps out or blocks out the noise. You go to the Wicked Cushion Freeze pad, I do have to push a little bit further or a little bit harder to compress the pad. However, the pad's not shrinking much on the inside, which is why you also maintain that space around your ear. This is still flattening up. I'm still getting a decent seal. Now I actually measured the noise reduction characteristic of both pads. I have a headphone rig that measures both. I have like artificial ears that measures everything I use as far as my reviews go. And I lost about 3 decibels of noise isolation with the freeze pad. It's not a big difference, but if you are intimately familiar with the Stealth Pro, you know exactly how it sounds because you use it all the time. Switching to the freeze pad, you're going to hear just a little bit more background noise without active noise cancellation on. And with noise cancellation on, you may just hear a little bit more fan noise if your PC fans are whirling away. It's not a big difference, but it is a few decibels, so you can notice it if you've been playing with this for hours at a time for the past few months since you bought it. So I do prefer the freeze pads from a comfort perspective only because I don't game for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. If I'm sitting down with these, it's because I want to play for a few hours. So the biggest improvement for me is the comfort. So let's talk about sound quality. All right, so when I first reviewed the Stealth Pro, I actually measured the frequency response on my headphone measuring rig. And I think since the firmware updates came out, they changed the sound profile a little bit. I kind of noticed that within a month or two after the review. So I remeasured it and updated my website database. Now, if you're not familiar with this, you're new to the channel, one huge thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But I measure and update all of the headsets that I review. I actually have about 30 to 40 more headsets I haven't added yet that I still have. So this will be expanding, and it helps give you an idea on how one headset sounds compared to another. So when we look at the stock frequency response, that's the blue line. This is the stock signature sound on the Stealth Pro. All three sliders set to 0. The blue line is how it measures. And they bumped the bass in that mid bass area, like the 80 hertz, 120 hertz, which is fine. A lot of people like that kind of bass, and because they scooped it down as you approach 300 hertz, it doesn't sound too muddy either. So, and then you can see the rest of the curve is actually really nice for the Stealth Pro. There's a little bit of a peak around 8,000 hertz, and that's where a lot of people are sensitive to that really sharp treble. So if you ever do your own custom EQ, just drop 8K down by a few dB, and it's even easier to listen to. When I switch to the freeze pad, I mentioned how this impacts sound quality. Because it's a little bit more open, I technically have less of an airtight seal. It's not much, but it is enough, as you see here on the green line, to reduce the bass a little bit. Now this is super easy to re-add with the Turtle Beach app, the Audio Hub app. You can just take 120 hertz and the 64 hertz bands and just boost them a little bit, and you're right back to where you were. However, I actually like the sound profile with the freeze pad more because I don't like too strong of bass. I want it to be a little bit cleaner. The benefit of the freeze pad is the bass delivery is actually smoother. It's less peaky. So if you do listen to these or listen to music with these, it sounds more natural with the freeze pad. When you look in the mid-range, it's a really good match as well. You have a bump in the 500 hertz region just by switching pads, but it's only 1 or 2 dB. Most people aren't going to notice it, and this is a lot of where your vocals come from, especially male vocals. So it's not necessarily a bad bump. Again, this is without doing any EQ whatsoever, just plug and forget, or swap and forget, I guess in this case. When you look at the higher frequencies, it's similar. They have a couple different peaks and dips, but headphone measuring rigs versus your ear, even if I had like the $40,000 headphone measuring rig out there, the way my system measures treble is not exactly how you're going to perceive it. I'm only showing you how this measures on my rig between one pad to the other. It's a minimal change, personally. I feel like what I've always noticed with the freeze pads is they tend to be a little bit stronger between 6,000 to 8,000 hertz for me. Mostly in this case, it's 8,000 hertz for this particular model. So by switching it, if you don't want to do a custom EQ, which I can show you here in a moment, just drop 8 kilohertz down by 3 decibels, maybe boost 4K by 2 decibels, and that's a great sound profile. Now, I did do a custom EQ, and if you look at the bottom of this page here, and I click on, you can see where it says GT Custom EQ. All I have to do is click this plus sign, and I'm going to get rid of the stock profile for now. I didn't do a major tune, but you can tell that after my custom EQ, the bass is kind of a little bit emphasized again in that deeper bass, so we preserve the stock sound. I reduced the 500 hertz by only 1 or 2 decibels, and I filled in the 4K region. To me, it just brings out a little bit more detail of the headset, and you can see a few decibels were taken off. I don't do aggressive EQs because I want to preserve more of the sound that you're used to. I just clean it up a little bit, and then you can adjust it from there. So if you like the idea of what I did for EQ, here is my custom preset on the screen. Feel free to pause it right here, copy it. I do have numbers to the best of my ability to help kind of show you how I dialed it in. But overall, even without swapping, this is one of the few headsets, the other one being the Odyssey Maxwell, where you can basically just get a freeze pad, switch them out, and you're good to go. Now, numbers aside and measurements aside, my real world experience, I kind of lean towards the freeze pad only for the breathability. That's typically the most important thing for me, is long-term comfort outside of obviously sound quality and it working the way it's supposed to. So when it comes to pads though, you don't want to negatively impact your sound or destroy the sound, but anything that improves comfort is great. I think some people may like the stock pad more if you have thicker glasses and you're concerned with pressure on your head. The stock pads just have slightly less pressure. They also have better noise isolation. But again, the long-term breathability and more space inside the ear, in addition to getting your custom designs to make your headset look a little bit more unique. There's a lot of things to like about the FreezePad. It didn't negatively impact my ability to play first-person shooters or anything like that, so the FPS stuff is not affected by it. And that's partly because they were really reserved, frankly, with the pad size. They could have gone huge. Some of the other Wicked Cushion pads in the past have been a lot thicker than stock, which can have a big difference on how you hear audio coming from it. So with this pad, because it was only a tiny adjustment in size, there's no major impact in performance for gaming. So I had no problems just switching and playing, and now I can wear it for a longer period of time without getting that nasty ear sweat. So that about wraps up the video. Hopefully you found it helpful and you learned what you needed today. Don't forget to like and subscribe again. I'd love to see you at the next video. And if you do purchase these, remember, I have discount codes below to take 15% off. So thank you as always, and I'll see you next time.